So if you've been tossing up between these two shoes, you're checking out the specs and you can see that they're pretty evenly matched. Well, I can tell you that shoe comparison I got for you guys today, another Max stack battle. So we've got the Superblast 2 up against the Brooks Glycerin Max. So we're going to go through their key features, their similarities, their differences, and hopefully from that, that's going to give you guys a great indication of choosing which of these two shoes is right for you. But before we get into it, a big shout out to my #1 running store, the Running Company at Geelong. I've got a link to their website in the description. Make sure you go check out that and check out all their running gear. And also guys, if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. And with the specs, so both neutral road running shoes here and both definitely in that max cushion category. Now, checking out the price. So in Australia, you are going to pay $30 more for the Glycerin Max over the Superblast, same price in the US. So that's a little bit interesting there. Now in the weight, big difference between these two shoes. Superblast 2 coming in a fair bit lighter. Can you feel that on the foot? You certainly can. Much lighter, much more of a nimble shoe. Now in the stacks, very, very evenly matched though. Can you feel it on the foot? Not really. If anything, the Superblast probably feels like it is a tiny bit taller, but again, that's just because this foam is just far less compliant than what it is in the Glycerin Max. And here our uppers. So by the look of these two uppers, they both look pretty thick and hot, but it's certainly not the case in the Superblast 2. So the actual material here that they use is called jacquard woven. And yeah, it does look really thick and like it's not going to be breathable, but it is, especially through these vents. So it's got these sort of breathing vents all throughout the shoe. Very breathable shoe, and it's actually quite light and airy. In our heel counter though, pretty solid heel counter there. We've got a little pull tab on the back, probably a medium amount of padding around the heel collar. Our tongue is quite thin. The tongue is gusseted, but there is some pads on the tongue. The material of the tongue is really nice too. It reminds me what they would use in a wetsuit, but it's certainly not the same, but just looks similar. Standard lacing system used here on the Superblast, no issues with that. It creates a great lockdown in the shoe, no problems with any heel slip or anything like that. True to size in the length, and I'm going to say the width of the shoe is normal as well, and it's got a good amount of volume. So it's not too big where it's baggy and saggy, and it's not too small where it just feels like your foot is a bit constricted. They've got it just right here in the Superblast. Build quality, ASICS, it's always excellent, and stepping comfort, it's not too bad in the Superblast. Glycerin Max. So the material that they use here is it's called an engineered air mesh. But it's certainly a lot thicker and a lot more material and a lot more premium feeling than the material that you're going to get in the Superblast. So this just feels like luxury. But breathability obviously is not as good as the Superblast. It certainly is a hotter shoe in general. A really solid heel counter at the back here, same as the Superblast, but what you've got here, we've got a little Achilles flare here that the Superblast doesn't have, but I really like that in this shoe. And we've got a lot more padding on the Glycerin Max, so very plush amount of padding around the heel collar, and that padding is the same within the tongue as well. So a really plush, padded tongue, really thick. The tongue is not gusseted, so that's adding, sort of taking some breathability away from the shoe. So adding lots of padding to it sort of really heats up the shoe. The lacing system itself is looks a bit weird, but it's still effective. It's just not quite center. It sort of angles off on a reverse angle that you're not used to seeing on shoes. But lockdown is fine in this shoe. I've had no issues. Now in the fit, I'm going to say it is true to size in the length. However, could be a little long for some people. But it's certainly got a lot of volume in the toe box. So lots more volume than you're going to get in the Superblast. It's a little bit wider as well. So just be wary about that. If you've got a really thin foot, you could probably consider coming half size down in this one. But I quite like the extra room. Now the build quality in the Brooks, it's just as good as the ASICS, so excellent here from Brooks. And the stepping comfort though, the Glycerin Max, it's just amazing in this shoe. This has to be one of the most comfortable shoes that you could ever put your foot in. And what I love about both these outsoles is that neither shoe has got rubber just lathered all over the bottom, so they've got it all segmented off. Really love seeing that in shoes. So what we got, Superblast 2, ASICS grip is what they use in the majority of the rubber in the shoe, but it does say in the website that they've got a AHA heel plug. I'm not sure which part of the heel plug is made out of the AHA rubber, but early reports on the ASICS website did say it did have ASICS grip. But ASICS grip, the grip, excellent. Durability is absolutely excellent as well. And as I said, it's segmented off so it doesn't constrict the midsole. It lets the midsole splay, it lets it do its thing. It sort of aids to the ride. But as I said, grip, durability in this shoe is excellent. Performs amazingly, just like it does in the Glycerin Max. As you can see here, just not lathered on. They've just got it in the high areas, just where they need it at the back, and also just slithers in the forefoot. Again, it's gonna just let the midsole splay, breathe. It adds to the ride of the shoe. They've got these crevices through the shoe that the Superblast doesn't have, and again, that's just letting that midsole splay even more, adding some more compression and some more softness to the ride. Durability, early days in this shoe, so I've only got about 65 Ks in this shoe so far, but it's showing pretty much no signs of wear whatsoever, and I've only been running on this one on the concrete. But yeah, so durability looks absolutely amazing, and grip, excellent as well. I finally got to run on some wet road today in this shoe, and yeah, it didn't falter, so just as good as the ASICS grip. And then our midsole, so both these two shoes stack massive slabs of their midsole foam, but you're going to get a dual density foam in the Superblast 2, just meaning two types of foam. So what's great about the Superblast is the majority of the foam here is their premium super foam, or their race day foam, the foam they use in their racing shoes. They don't skimp out on it, so they haven't just put a little slither in. It's the majority of the foam in this shoe, and that's really what makes this Superblast 2 so sought after, and it probably justifies the price that the Superblast 2 costs. So huge slab of that. There's no plate in the shoe, but it's still a very rigid shoe, especially for a non-plated shoe. Now under our super foam, the FF Turbo Plus, we've got a really thin layer of the FF Blast Plus Eco. And that's the same type of foam that you're going to find in the Nimbus and in the Keanu as well. So it's not a super foam, it's just more of like a daily trainer type foam, adding a little bit of durability to the bottom of the shoe. Now geometry wise, we have got a little bit of a forefoot rocker here, so it doesn't feel like a overly rocketed shoe, the Superblast, in comparison to the rocket shoes on the market. It's quite moderate, but you still can feel it on the run. And with the Glycerin Max, so the foam that they're using in this one is a nitrogen injected foam. It's a new foam from Brooks, and it's called DNA tuned. Now a really unique thing what they've done here with their midsole foam, they've tuned different parts of the midsole differently. So they've got quite technical of what they've done, or quite specky what they've done, but to put it in simple terms, they've got some bigger bubbles injected in the midsole foam in the rear, and that just is going to give the shoe, or going to make the shoe in the rear a little bit more compliant, more soft. So for those rear foot landings, they're going to be nice and soft and squishy, and as you roll through your foot strike, there's smaller bubbles up under the forefoot of the shoe, and that's going to make the shoe obviously less compliant, and it's going to feel a little bit more responsive. So very clever what they've done there. Well done, Brooks. Now no plate in this shoe either, but again, it's a pretty rigid shoe. It's probably, it's more rigid than the Superblast, which I didn't really expect. Now geometry wise as well, they've got a bit of a forefoot rocker here. Now I will say it is a little more aggressive, or a little more aggressive feeling than what you're going to find in the Superblast 2, and it is a little later, so a little later through the foot strike. However, it's not too late. You can still feel it while you run, while you're going at your jogging paces. And in our ride, so these two shoes probably couldn't feel any more different. So with our Glycerin Max, it's exactly what that tune foam claims is how it feels on the ride as well. So super soft through the heel. It does firm up a little bit as you go through your foot strike, and there is a little bit of pop through the forefoot, and lets you get onto that rocker and just roll onto the next step. Now what's really unique about the ride of this is just the amount of shock absorption the midsole provides. So it's nothing like I've really felt before, and if I can explain it, it feels like that, if you can imagine that the midsole is just this big plate of, in Australia we call it jelly, and I think in the US you call it jello, or it's gelatine. But you know, if you hit some jelly or some gelatine, and it just takes all the shock absorption away, and it just wobbles. So that's how much shock absorption this thing, well, that's what it feels like to me when I run in it. But obviously you don't get the big wobble effect in this shoe, but that's sort of the effect of how much it sort of absorbs all that shock. So yeah, really weird feeling. But you'd think with that feedback that you'd it'll be really sluggish, and then you get stuck in this the jelly, and you can't get through the next foot track. It'll be like running through sand. It doesn't actually feel like that, because this tuned foam sort of gets you out of that shock absorption phase pretty quickly. And you can just roll onto that forefoot, get onto that rocker, and away you go. So they've done a pretty good job here. It doesn't come across to be a fast shoe by any means, but with our Superblast 2, so yeah, as I said, totally different experience. You're going to get a lot. So this is a firmer ride, especially in comparison to the Glycerin Max. So although it's a big stack, you don't actually sink into this foam too much. So it's far less compliant, far less sink. But when you do sink into this foam, it's got a really quick rebound. So this super foam, it's got, yeah, really responsive and really throws the foot out. Really wants to get your foot off the ground as quick as it possibly can. One of the best things about the Superblast 2 is how consistent the ride is, and just because of how resilient the foam is. So this shoe is going to feel exactly the same in your first mile as it's going to be for your 10th or your 20th mile, because this foam doesn't really break down. Whereas the Glycerin Max, I do notice that this shoe, as the more you run in it, it does get a little softer as the run goes on, where the Superblast 2, it pretty much holds steady. But yeah, as I said, much more of a responsive shoe, much firmer shoe. There is bounce, but it's a really quick rebound type bounce. Very, very stable shoe as well. It's got a really wide platform, just like the Glycerin Max. But I'm going to say, so the Superblast 2 has actually got a wider, it's wider through the rear of the shoe, but in the front, they're about the same. And best use, so Superblast 2, I think this one certainly shines on your long run. It's a light shoe as well. It's got a really efficient ride, so that's why it's really suited to that. Also, if you need to pick up the pace, this one can handle some workouts as well. Probably not those really fast race day workouts, but around that tempo range, this shoe is absolutely great for that. Now, where I think the Glycerin Max is best suited to are those really slow days, so your recovery days, your real easy days, maybe your doubles where you just need to tick the legs over. You need to look after the legs. You don't want to feel any shock going through your legs. So if you've been tossing up between these two shoes, you're checking out the specs and you can see that they're pretty evenly matched. Well, I can tell you that they are pretty much nothing like each other. So you just need to be wary about that. I know that the Superblast 2 is really hard to get your hands on at the moment, and if you're looking for something instead of the Superblast 2, then the Glycerin Max is certainly not that shoe. So don't think that this is going to replace this, because it's definitely not the case. I actually think that the Hyperion Max 2 is more closely matched to the Superblast 2 than the Glycerin Max. So for me, the Glycerin Max is more closely matched to the New Balance More V5, more so than it is the Superblast. And the Superblast 2, if you're looking for an alternative for this one, there is not too many shoes out there that are going to come close to the performance of the shoe, the lightweight and how much stack and the super foam. But for me, the closest shoe is the Puma Mag Max Nitro. But anyway, guys, that is it from me. If you've got any questions regarding these two shoes, anything I've missed, just put it in the comments below and I'll get on to those. But thank you for watching. Make sure you give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.